Welcome everyone, and sorry I'm a little late. I've been dealing a little bit with audio issues, so let me know that audio is okay, and I will progress. Yeah, I think my I think my kernel drivers might need a little bit of updating, but we'll work on them later. I think I have it down for right now. So yeah, please let me know that the audio sounds good. So welcome to the Null News. This week we got quite a few exciting things to cover, but as always, all opinions are that of my own. I have not been asked to say anything by anyone, have not been paid to say anything by anyone, and my opinions don't reflect that of anybody's but myself. Yep. Just another quick reminder as well. I will be out for the news on the 8th, so there will be no news on the 8th, and the following week we'll have the 2 weeks combined, which I know is everyone's favorite because we get to run through a bunch of random news that I think was the most important. So with no further ado, let's jump right into our breaking issues. So, as you know, we start with security, and we're going to talk from everything so there was a governor who obviously doesn't understand what HTML is, and in my personal opinion, made a fool of himself. And then further on to one of the largest DDoS attacks was mitigated this week, and or last week, not this week. Hopefully no new DDoS attack happens this week. And there's a new activity cluster called DEV-0343 with suspected ties to the Middle East. Now, interesting story on the Middle East. I one time, let me bring up a Google map. I one time accidentally told people, I was much younger, that I lived in the Middle East. And they were quite confused because when people asked me what it was like living where I did, I said that it was much like the rest of the United States. Here you can see, here we go. I live in like the middle eastern part of the United States, not what's classically known as the Middle East, though. So, yeah, that was a little bit embarrassing. But anyways, moving on, we're going to cover those news stories in security. I'm going to share some blog articles on how to make your services the most secure that you can. And then we're going to move on to the cloud, where we're going to talk about all the things Microsoft, Google, Azure, DigitalOcean, and any other really public cloud out there released. And then we're going to move on to cloud in general, which is mostly around Kubernetes. And then we're going to move on to random articles that I found interesting, which cover anything from how to deploy cloud infrastructure to how to be a better software engineer. So that happens. And then at the end, I always lead up with some of my favorite open source projects, where we're going to dig into those a little bit more. So let's jump straight into security right now. Hi everybody. It's great to see you this week. I hope that you guys are doing fine. I think I'm caught up with everything. So I'm going to be making some more videos, and it's going to be great. Actually, I have a fun Saturday live stream that's going to come up here soon. That we're going to make a Kubernetes operator. I was meant to make this a while ago, and then I got sick and it never happened. So we're going to be doing that not next week, but the week after that, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking quite a bit towards it. So let's talk about DEV-0343. That's the first thing on our docket. It's a new activity cluster. Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center first observed and began tracking it in late July. So anyways, it's done a lot of passwords and been password spraying against Office 365, which is probably why Microsoft picked up on it. And yes, if you don't know, the dev and a number is designated to unknown groups. So this is a new group that hasn't been given a designation yet. So they've been tracking it. And basically it's attacking United States, European Union, and Israeli government partners. What a surprise. What a surprise. So anyways, that is happening. So be on the lookout to see what they do in the future. Something more exciting and less doom and gloom was that Azure actually mitigated a very large DDoS attack. Now, if you don't know what 2.4 TBPS means, it means a very large DDoS attack. The largest DDoS attack was in 2016 again, 2017. One second, it's right here. I actually have it up. Let's see. Oh, wait. Yeah, 2017. I'm fairly good. 2017 of 2.5. So a 2.4 is right up there with the largest one ever. And they actually, I think, completely mitigated it, which is fairly cool that we can have a 2.4 terabyte terabytes per second. Terabytes per second. That's so much information. Anyways, and it was targeting a customer in Europe. Anyways, this is pretty fantastic. So it was cool. I would love to see more on how they mitigate it, but you can also rest easy that you're being protected from pretty good ones. Now, I'm also going to link this article from Cloudflare. Everybody knows I love Cloudflare, and they wrote a great article on the history of DDoS attacks and also how they're measured, because there's actually different ways to measure them. How long did the attack last for? What was the peak terabytes per second? There's a bunch of different ways to measure a DDoS attack, which is fascinating, and they go into a lot of it, as well as the history of the largest attacks. So anyways, cool article. Let's move on to a governor who obviously does not know what, and this is honestly worse. This is just bad understanding. So basically a reporter reported that there was a vulnerable website, and basically alerted the people that owned it, which was the state. And this is the governor's. Through a multi-step process, an individual took the records of at least 3 educators, decoded the HTML source code. I'm sorry. I didn't read anything more that this person said because I stopped on He should have consulted. I understand that governors can't be expected to understand everything. You should consult with somebody before tweeting something like this. You can consult me. I will charge you a small fortune, but you should have consulted somebody. Anyways, I don't know if there was actually illegal doing, if they actually hacked the servers to know if there was vulnerability. If it was just in the HTML, there's nothing wrong. That is publicly viewable. There is no decoding. So yeah, anyways, sorry. I not only found it funny, but sad. A little bit sad. Let's move on. There was a vulnerability in GitHub Actions that allowed you to basically make pull requests even into protected branches. It has been patched, but this being said, if you have write privileges to the repository, you can still get around it. So we'll be watching for a patch to that. This was actually a really cool hack that... Thank you. I'm glad that you read it the same way. This is actually a really cool hack. Now, there's nothing that I found, and Google didn't say that there was any way you could actually leverage this, but basically, when you encode and decode a video, there's actually this time scale, and they took a very small, short video and put in the header that it was a very long video and would take forever to play because of the time scale. Anyways, when they uploaded it, they basically got a timeout. So for just a 4 megabit video, an interesting attack. I'm gonna follow up with this and see if they actually find anything more with that. All right. Then there's these. There is a Windows 0 day that happened, yeah. So there's a Windows 0 day it has been patched. It affected a bunch of ones all the way up to Windows 10. I did not see mention of Windows 11. I am assuming Windows 11 was also hit. I haven't seen if Windows 11 got a patch for it, but everything that was still supported by Windows, it has been patched by it. Yeah, there was a 0 day. Hopefully, I don't really use Windows much, so this wasn't supposed to be yet, so let me remove that. That was not about security. Okay, so again, not a good way to handle security. If somebody tells you you have a security fault, listen to them and thank them and tell them thank you and that they're the greatest. And basically, a school email marketing company told them to go away, and that's not great. So, not great. The very last thing in security was virtual machines in Azure went down. So basically, there was a outage. I put this under security. I go back and forth whether this is cloud news or security. It's both, and this is why it's the last thing in the security, because we're going to jump into Azure news right after this on cloud. But what happened here was the root cause for the Windows-based virtual machines. The Windows-based virtual machine utilizes the Windows virtual, because you have to tack Windows on front of everything, the Windows Virtual Machine Agent, the VM agent extension, which is used to manage interaction between virtual machines and the Azure Fabric. Anyways, it went down, and there was some mitigation steps, and they recovered quickly-ish. Let's see. I think it was like 4 hours. Wait. So 6 to 12. So longer than... No, I can't do math. That's 4 hours. No, that's not 4 hours. That's not 4 hours. That's 6 hours. I can't do math. It's early in the morning. I can't do math. It was down for about 6 hours. So that's kind of long. And I know that it had rippling effects on other services that they provided. So yeah. Anyways, that happened. Let's move on to Azure Cloud News. So they actually had a bunch of stuff happening, but a lot of it is now in public preview with their Map iOS update. I don't really care about their iOS SDK stuff. I'm not sure many of you do, but I thought I'd go over some of these. They have, again, a couple things that went from public preview to generally available. So now I picked out some of my favorite things here. The Azure IoT Central has some new and updated features. So they updated the tile display to be better, and they also did your own SAS key support, as well as device template assignment based on device model ID. So there's some improvements and new features to that, and it's now generally available. There is the IPv6 for the KubeNet, which is now in public preview, which means you can access it freely. You just have to try. And so now it's allowing the dual stack IPv6 overlay networking for the KubeNet for their Kubernetes. So that's pretty interesting. And then they also allow you to customize the Azure Static Web Apps authentication with a serverless function, so bringing more support to serverless functions. And AKS Out of Tree Cloud Provider Controller Manager is now in public preview. This is also very cool. So there was a point in time where all of the cloud provider managers were in tree with Kubernetes. And this was a big problem because if Azure wanted to make an update, they actually had to make an update to the core code of Kubernetes. And so there's a lot of work to bring those out of tree. I actually thought that this was more done than this, but it turns out this has been ongoing for a long time, and this is the fruit of their labor based on that. So, yep, it's now in public preview. Another thing is the AKS support for Kubernetes 122. This is one thing that I give Azure tons of credit for. They are one of the most up-to-date Kubernetes distributions. GKE doesn't even get close to supporting 122 yet. They don't even support 121 yet, I don't think. So anyways, Azure is very much on updating and supporting the latest and greatest from the upstream, which is pretty cool. And now moving on to Google Cloud. So Google's Cloud Next went on. If you don't know, another thing that went on this week was the KubeCon. So that's an interesting topic. I was going to provide more KubeCon coverage, but that was a lot. Now, what I want to say next is that next year I want to make it to KubeCon myself. I want to give, I'd like to, if nothing else, give a talk, but if nothing else, actually just go. And if you're able to, I think it would be really great to have like a Null hangout after KubeCon sometime where we go somewhere to get drinks or something like that. So if that would be interesting to you guys, I think I'm going to be trying to plan on going there next year as long as everything goes well. And that being said, I'm also looking at giving a talk there. Yeah, I'll be working on writing up one of those here soon. Anyways, Next also happened this last week, which is horrible because they overlapped, which made it very difficult to keep track of everything that was going on. So anyways, this is kind of, Google Cloud's Next overview. Anthos for VM. So Anthos is their way of allowing you to run their cloud in your data centers or on other public clouds, basically wherever you want, and they brought support for virtual machines to that. Another thing that they did was making the multi-cloud API more unified, which means they actually broke it, but it's now more consistent across the platforms. They also made it easier to consume from GKE to your data center, so to your local data center. And those were the biggest things for Anthos. And here's another one that actually ties together more stuff than just the Anthos stuff, because there's a new cloud build hybrid as well as new built-in cloud build stuff. And then they have a new managed service for Prometheus, just like AWS. AWS released theirs like 2 weeks ago, and now GCP is releasing their own managed Prometheus and introducing log analysis and some stuff in the serverless. Some of the stuff we already covered, like the ability to have the warm functions so you don't have the cold starts. All right, let's move on to Azure. Azure, we're actually going to, I said Azure, I meant AWS, my bad. All right, so announcing the general availability of VMware Cloud on AWS. Outpost, so basically, again, we talked about this. This is VMware Cloud on AWS, so cool, especially if you use VMware. This is something I actually understated the first time I covered it. I covered it last week, and I didn't fully understand the gravity of this. The AWS announces the general availability of AWS Cloud Control API. So the Cloud Control API is actually really, really cool. And it's been out for a little while. It's now generally available, and it didn't just jump to generally available. And it had been something I had never used, but it actually provides basically the same unified API for, I'm going to say all. It's not all, but they're looking to add more and more things to it. The same unified API interactions with all underlying services. So you can create, read, update, delete, and list AWS and third-party service resources with a consistent API. This is actually really huge, and I think it's going to make doing some interesting things with the AWS API much more manageable and user-friendly because they're consistent. Consistency is fantastic. So anyways, I understated it, so I wanted to revisit it because I think that this is really cool, and I understated it last time I talked about it. This is maybe one of the largest things that they've released this year. All right. So announcing Amazon Forecast Weather Index for Central America, Middle East, and Africa. This is something I didn't even know existed, the Amazon Forecast Weather Index. But it's now available for Central America, the Middle East, and Africa. All right, distributed load testing on AWS version 2.0. So this is a brand new thing, except that it's not new. They had a distributed load testing version 1, but it sucked. We can get into why it sucked, but it sucked. Just trust me on that one. So this looks to be I'm going to say rewrite, but it's not necessarily a rewrite. But what it does is it launches multiple AWS Fargate tasks. If you don't know what Fargate, it's like it's like halfway in between serverless and Kubernetes. It's somewhere in the middle. Anyways, it launches the Fargate tasks in multiple availability zones and basically does your load testing that way. It's actually pretty cool. And if you're sold on AWS and all of your infrastructure is on AWS, it's definitely probably the easy way to do distributed load testing on your infrastructure. Now, if you're multi-cloud, you can still use it, but there might be better open source projects that you can do. Especially, I love the chaos engineering that you can get with like Chaos Monkey, and then the load testing that you can do with something like K6. So, anyways, that's out there. That being said, let's talk about not this, but this. This is KubeCon. This is another cloud thing. That's it for the public clouds. But yeah, so this happened this week, and there were a ton of sessions. Hopefully, we'll have a Null session next year. That's my goal. But tons of sessions. So I was thinking about doing like a live breakdown, but there was just too much going on to do like a once a night live breakdown. That being said, I kind of have one complaint. These live sessions should be live stream and free to use. Most of them are educational. You're going to be able to view them later in November, and I'll probably make my video on which ones are the best and recommendations in November when they're publicly available. I don't like holding sessions behind a paywall. As you guys know, I put a lot of educational material on YouTube without a paywall because it's important to me. It's how I learned as a self-taught engineer. And yeah, it's important. So I don't really like it. And basically, they hold it behind a paywall for a while. Anyways, there's some interesting things, and we're going to end up covering them a little bit later. I just wanted you guys to know that I wasn't not covering them. I will, just when they're publicly available. One of the things that came out of this was this observability is the new thing, which is important. And this article covers some interesting topics like when and how much is too much information when you get swarmed with it. But there was a lot of talks that covered this observability, and there's a lot of projects around Kubernetes that are digging into observability. And it really is a big deal with open tracing or open telemetry and things like that that are coming out. It's one of the biggest things and biggest struggles with cloud infrastructure that people deal with. When we mostly used monoliths, this wasn't actually that difficult. And this is one of the extra things that are required. Now, I would say that one of the things that Kubernetes has done the worst at, and the cloud native people have done the worst at, is they kind of had this push right. Oh, don't worry about logging properly. We'll make a sidecar for that later, so your devs can just write bad programs. And that's really not the way to do it. And it's one of the reasons I don't like pods as a construct, because you try to treat pods like a VM so that you can, and sidecars, so that you can basically not write good applications. And this is again why I say you should only have one container per pod, because it's supposed to be, except there are very few instances where more than one container per pod. I will give it to you, and sidecars maybe. But in general, I don't think that they're a great idea, because too many people use them as a way to write bad microservices. Anyways, we'll talk more on the CNCF and the KubeCon when those videos are publicly available, and I'll announce them on the news. And I'm probably going to actually make a short video on which ones I thought were best, with a nice summary on them and why you should watch them. All right, so let's talk about random cloud-based things. VMware came out with a statement that I found interesting. At the very least, I don't understand it. VMware imagines memory servers, a new source of shared software-defined RAM. This sounds horrible. I don't actually understand it, because what they're basically wanting to do is virtualize memory. But the whole point of memory is to be fast. And beyond to be fast, we do things like, all right, so in servers that have two processors, there's actually a NUMA bus that, if each processor gets in the two processor gets half of the memory that they can directly access. The other half of the memory, they have to go through the NUMA bus. And the NUMA bus is inherently inefficient. And so most things, and even I covered this in Kubernetes, they have a project to make sure that your pod is scheduled on a CPU that has enough not shared memory, so that doesn't have to hit the NUMA bus. So even the NUMA bus, a hardware constraint, is too much overhead for people. So these memory servers, as a software-defined thing, I just don't see it actually working. Now, maybe they can prove me wrong, and they're much better engineers than I am. This isn't why you use memory. Memory is the fastest access layer that, I don't know. I could be completely off base, and this is going to be the next most awesome thing. And in that case, I'll be happy to be wrong, because if it's really awesome, it's really awesome, and that's awesome. Wow, I could have said awesome a few more times. All right, GitHub Actions, granular personal access token scopes for self-hosted runners in enterprises. Good blog article on managing personal access token scopes for self-hosted runners in enterprises. English is hard. Self-hosted runners are basically where you only get so many minutes of GitHub runners. And then, so if you have long builds and stuff that you're wanting to do in GitHub Actions and you're fully sold on that, what you can do is self-host these runners, and they get the tokens to talk to GitHub Actions, and they actually run the actions on your hardware. And so if you're looking at doing that, this is a great blog article for that. This is another thing that GitHub is doing. I actually have a problem with their wording, but for anybody that's new to software engineering, I think that this is a really great thing, and it's something that I've been wanting to do more of. I use my YouTube channel as a little bit of that, but is mentoring. And so if you're looking at mentoring, there is GitHub is releasing this mentoring, and I would recommend you to participate in it and see what you can get out of it. I would love to see how the mentoring sessions panned out. Now, that being said, I did have a problem. They stated here, this is a time for like-minded individuals. Come on, let's have diversity of thought. Don't say like-minded individuals. That's a dangerous path to go down to. I think they meant like-minded as in like you're both wanting to grow your careers. I'm not really sure though, and that horrifies me a little bit, just a little bit. But let's move on. I'm assuming they meant like you both want to grow your careers, so I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. Of course, the Apple event is this Monday, so it's at 10 a.m. PDT. Who cares about PDT? We all know that East Coast is the best coast in the United States. Anyways, so later today there is the big Apple event, and they're going to release a new MacBook that's going to look like all the other MacBooks have for the last decade. So it's not going to be that interesting. It's going to have the M1X probably, which means it's going to be a throwaway laptop because, things wear and tear things like hard drives are going to be soldered directly on and not use PCI. So you can look forward to a much more e-waste Apple event. That's what I'm a little hating on Apple there. Sorry. We're going to move on. I'm going to get one of these MacBooks because my wife really wants one. So you'll get a review of one of them, but we'll see how good it is for all the e-waste it's going to create. Something a little more exciting is the Linux Foundation is integrating the L3AF project to support eBPF programs. Now, I haven't released my video on eBPF. I actually have a fun eBPF program that I wrote. But if you don't know, eBPF is a way to write kernel-level modules without actually having to load them into the kernel. Anyways, the video will be a lot better about that. And L3AF is basically a way to orchestrate them. So containers are out and eBPF programs are in. And basically, this is the Kubernetes of eBPF programs in the kernel. If you're not writing microservices in eBPF, you're not doing it right. That's what I'm saying right now, 2021. When that's true in the future, you can mark my words right here. Yeah, it's never happening. But anyways, and please don't do that. Don't take me seriously that I meant that, because it's at the kernel level. So like, there would be a very difficult way to secure those applications. Very difficult. Anyways, here's the project. I'll leave a link. Do you guys like the links? I spend a lot of time getting you the links and making sure that they're available. Are they actually useful? Do I spend the time doing something useful? Let me know. Anyways, here's the repo just to prove that it exists. And it's a new open source. Who knew Walmart was going to make an open source project? That's what I wanted to say. Walmart made an open source project, and it's actually cool. Making a control plane for eBPF I'm actually more excited about this than I think I'm letting on because it's later on in the news. This is actually really cool, and Walmart made it. All right, let's move on. All right, so this is self-service analytics for Google Cloud now with Looker. And this is just an interesting article. I don't know why I even have it on here. It's not that interesting. I found it interesting. I put it on the list, and I didn't remove it. I should have removed it. There, I removed it. All right, the dark side of Kubernetes. I actually really like this picture. This guy's a little more cynical than I am. But this is a really great article. And it's short. It doesn't have a whole lot. But it talks about good security behavior and some of the stuff that is happening. So anyways, I suggest reading it because it just brings up some topics that you can research further. It doesn't go in depth in anything, just a nice high level things to be aware of when you're adopting Kubernetes. All right, so GitHub reworks secure okay, this is a security problem. So I didn't know of this thing called GitKraken. It's a UI, but it's not an open source UI for Git. It's not just GitHub, I don't think. Anyways, basically, its SSH library was creating insecure keys. One of the ways to create insecure SSH keys is by using an algorithm that actually creates duplicates. So you can actually create duplicated keys, and the vulnerability was that there was a high chance that this third-party library created duplicate keys, which means other people could access your infrastructure with their duplicated key. This is actually a really bad security vulnerability in SSH. So anyways, basically Microsoft and GitHub said you can't use those keys, and they revoked all of them, and they built in safeguards to prevent Gitkraken from adding newly generated weak keys. So if you use Gitkraken, you're not going to be able to use Gitkraken generated keys in your GitHub account. So, yeah. All right, really? I found this. Needed to bring light to it. 10 self-taught programmers who became full-time developers. Now, they don't have me on that list, and so it can't be a complete list. It should have been 11 self-taught programmers who became full-time developers. That being said, they also put it behind a paywall. So they're saying that they're showing you that you can do it too, but you have to pay them for them to. I completely disagree with this. All of my stuff is completely open. All right, let's move on. All right, Amazon is dropping their return to office plan and will now let most employees work from home indefinitely. So now I can actually work for Amazon if I wanted to. This is cool. I love to see companies taking this stance. It is, I think, the way of the future, especially as we try to combat energy consumption. Sure, data centers consume a lot of energy, but way less than actually driving your butt to an office, heating and cooling an office and a home. And so I definitely think this is the way to go to reduce our electricity and power consumptions. Also great for time. I work like 9 hours and I have more time because I'm not in the car. So it not only does my company get more time, but I actually have more of my own time as well. This, I don't know why wasn't in the cloud. This is one of the things. I didn't find it through Google Cloud's Next. They had so much information, it was hard to. I found another article that Google Cloud launched a managed Spark. Not something. Yeah, so anyways, this should have been with the cloud information, but anyways, they released a launch of Spark. I apologize about that. My tab's not always 100% in order. But yeah, so if you're looking at managed Spark, if you need to start using Spark, it's definitely worth looking into using a managed service so you don't have to manage it yourself. The reason I love managed services so much is that when you're a small team, the cost of managing one of these services and keeping it running way far outweighs your ability, it's technical debt. These people are already doing it, and yes, you do pay them, and eventually maybe you want to go onto your own managed service once you're large enough to actually make the cost benefit. But until then, it saves you time and money, and you can get an application out there. I'm sure you all know that. Anyways, it's why I let you know when new managed services exist, because if you're going to need it, this gives it to you nice and easy. All right. This is the SSL TLS. Remember, there is no SSL. This is just for legacy purposes because that's what people think of it as. It is TLS. I am going to email Cloudflare about getting SSL removed. Actually, they did a blog article on why they leave it in, and it's for legacy purposes because so many people think of it as SSL. You think of OpenSSL, it's TLS. Anyways, Cloudflare really pushes SSL with Universal SSL, and now they're doing something with the TLS Recommender, a tool that guides you to stronger configurations of your backend connection. So now this tool is very much for the Cloudflare and your origin servers. So it's not like just a generally available tool. It is generally available. It's just not useful unless you're really using Cloudflare. But if you are using Cloudflare, this is a fantastic tool you should be using. This is old news. We already covered it. This is something I didn't even know wasn't a thing. Cilium joins the CMCF. I didn't know that Cilium wasn't part of the CNCF. I would have told you it was. So that's cool. It joined it. I don't actually know what benefit Cilium got out of joining the CNCF. Like I said, I already thought that it was. And Cilium is a Kubernetes networking provider, CNI, and it uses eBPF, and it's very cool. And some places are actually moving it to the default CNI. Now, it is much more difficult than something like Calico. I like Project Calico because it's simple and it just works. And if you're a small team, I still recommend it. If you're going to manage it yourself, Cilium is much harder to manage than Calico is. Now, it is really cool and does some really cool stuff. So anyways, it's joined the CNCF. What's in the next tab? Oh, Istio's complexity demystified. I really like Lynn Sun. She has done some amazing things, and so this is not a crack against her, except it is a crack against this article. Basically, in this article, she says Istio isn't difficult anymore, and then doesn't really prove it in any way, and it's a very short article. I know that Lynn Sun knows more than this. She's worked on the project for a long time, and I would love to see a much more in-depth. Basically, she says, oh, you can just use Istio CTL analyze, and yes, that works when it works, but when it doesn't work, Istio is still just as complicated to debug, and Istio analyze doesn't actually get everything. Doesn't solve all the problems. Then she says that install is easy because there's just a command line that does it. But the problem is the install is still just as complicated. They just abstracted it through an install command. It's not just as complicated. It is a little bit less complicated. But my point goes that managing this install is still just, or not nearly as simple as something like Linkerd is. So I think it still has a long way to go. And this article, please write a longer one, because I'm sure that there's things that I don't realize that are simpler, but you just didn't really go into it, and I know that you can. So please write that article. Write the article that we need. Oh, this was just me looking up Istio, leaving tabs open. Yeah, please write the article that we need. Maybe I'll have to dig into it. Actually, Lynn Sun, if you'd like to be interviewed, anybody that knows Lynn Sun, I'm going to email her. I would actually love to interview her on her work on Istio. She's worked on it for, I think, since 2017, so pretty long time. All right, Red Hat announces a new edge capabilities in OpenShift and advanced cluster management. So Red Hat is probably, the OpenShift platform is probably the most advanced Kubernetes cluster out there that I know of. It really, really is. You'll pay for it, but it is pretty advanced. Cool thing, RISC-V. I embarrassed myself last week. I was talking about RISC-V and how I thought it was really cool and the future. And my boss said, yeah, Apple moved away from RISC a long time ago in like 2006. And I was like, no, they moved away from PowerPC. And he was like, Merrick, PowerPC was based off of RISC. Now, it was like, I think it was RISC-3 or RISC-4. It was based off of RISC-4. But I'm an idiot. I had no idea. Now, thankfully, I was like 13 and still heavily into chemistry at that point. So I have a little bit of an excuse, but still no excuse. I did not know PowerPC, IBM's whole stack, was based off of RISC. I did not know that. So anyways, it's kind of embarrassing. There's a new RISC board. It is still $400 US, but it comes with a GPU core. So this is actually pretty cool. I'm not sure I can afford to drop $400 on this to make a single YouTube video, so I probably am not going to, but I want to. Once I am able to, I will drop that money to make that YouTube video for you guys. This is a laptop that I actually contacted them and asked them if I could get a unit to review. Really wanted to review it for you. I haven't gotten a unit to review. They said maybe once everybody else is through with the review units, I could get the unit. So I'm still hoping that I get that to review. This is what a company that's worried about e-waste is going to look like. And they're going to make a computer that not only is self-upgradable by you, self-repairable. Look at these are all the parts. This is the entire laptop parts. Now, I think its screen has a funky aspect ratio. And I did cover this earlier when they actually announced the launch of it. But everything has this barcode. I know I call it a barcode. It's a QR code so that you can get the part and replace it with, and everything is made to be replaced. It's fantastic. It's how a laptop should be made. So when Apple says they can't do it, that's a categorical lie because this is in the same footprint. So anyways, if you're looking at a new laptop, I know I love System 76 and they do a pretty good job themselves, but they haven't gone this far. If you're looking at a new laptop, System 76 or the Framework laptop are definitely choices to go for. Now, if you guys want to help support me, I really want a PinePhone Pro because it's fun to say for one, and it's not tied to Google or Apple. So I am really thinking about making the change to a PinePhone Pro. I'm really excited about it. So I'll see if I can spend the money for a PinePhone Pro. I have an old phone. I might be able to convince the wife that I should spend the money to upgrade to a PinePhone Pro. And if I do, definitely making a video about it. All right. GitHub released new issues. So if you use GitHub issues, this is actually pretty cool. There's definitely some big updates to GitHub issues that are expanding the projects and boards and actually making it much more of a competitor. I actually wished we had this when I was working at SUSE because SUSE heavily used GitHub to manage their workflows, and it is so much better now. Better permissions, better management, and pretty much better across the board. So definitely check this out if you use GitHub. It's worth it. I don't think that you need to use Jira if you don't want to. Now a lot of companies use Jira for reasons, and I understand them. But yeah. Anyways. What do you guys think about this? I saw this. DNS-01 challenge, wildcard TLS certificates on Kubernetes. What do you guys think of a once a month live stream where we come up with a challenge and we do it on live stream? I'm kind of really digging the idea. This first one is going to be an operator. Maybe the next one will be this TLS wildcard challenge with TLS certificates and Let's Encrypt. Do you guys like that idea? Let me know. Let me know if anybody made it to this point in the discussion. If you're still here, if you're liking this, please give me a thumbs up. Does wonders for my morale. Leave a comment. I love it when you guys comment. You guys are a fantastic community. Yeah, let's move on. Very last random article. I'm sorry. I know that there was a ton of random articles, but I was really loving these articles. Lessons learned from sharding Postgres at Notion. So Notion is a work. It helps you do your work. It helps you log it, and I actually use Notion for the Null channel on a free one, where I basically store all the links and all the things for this thing. And I love dev blogs, and this blog goes into sharding Postgres at Notion. So I love dev blogs because they're a way to learn from other people. So if you're using Postgres and you're looking at sharding it, definitely take a read here. Now, there is a Kubernetes operator, but not everybody runs Kubernetes and wants to have that overhead. Now, if you do, the Kubernetes operator for Postgres is fairly good. But if you're not, definitely take a look at this. I haven't read the whole thing yet. I made it to this pretty picture, which means I'm about halfway through. But up to this pretty picture right here, this is actually a fantastic blog on sharding Postgres. So definitely check this out. And I'm seeing that you guys want the live stream challenges, so we're going to try to do that once a month. If that's too much work on me, we might scale it back to every other month. But once a month, we're going to do a challenge. This month, it's going to be making a Kubernetes operator. We already have what operator it's going to be. We're going to inject a sidecar with Visual Studio Code onto any running deployment, which is going to be pretty cool. And then next month, I guess, we're going to do a TLS certificate. So tweet at me, join the Discord. If you have ideas that you'd like to do live challenges, let me know and we'll do those live challenges. I think that will be really fun and entertaining. And maybe I can get some guest hosts, collaborators to do them with me live. That would actually be even more fun. So if you'd be willing to join me on one of these, that would be really great. All right. Anyways, Postgres sharding. Check it out. It's really cool. Good article. Thank you, Notion, for writing up. I mean, they spent time writing this up. And so thank you. Thank you for doing that. Let's talk about our projects. Now, I know all of us love command line applications. And so this week, I know that I get a selection of open source tools for you. And so this week, we're going over command line tools. Now, I'm not just doing Go command line tools. I found them for all of our favorite languages. So if you're wanting to write a command line app, I'm giving you my favorite for each language. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best because I don't have a ton of experience in every single language. So these are just my favorite. My most experienced are Rust, C++, and Go, so those are probably the most applicable. The other ones I have only limited experience with, so do your own research. But they will give you a start. So here, let's dig into this. Here is a really cool C++ command line interface. Now, it is a header only, which makes it really easy to statically link and use this, or actually just use in your project because all you have to do is include the header file. So this is a really great command line interface for C++. I have used it and it is pretty fantastic. Just register any function with a helper string, and the type safety occurs automatically. It's actually really nice, and if you use C++, I highly recommend it. I've used it quite extensively. So yeah, check it out, use it, love it. I don't know, if maybe nobody uses C++ here. For Rust, I highly recommend Clap. Clap is a fantastic command line argument parser, and it works really, really well. You can see quick examples, and if you're just getting into Rust, writing command line tools is probably the easiest way to write your first command line, writing your first Rust program. And you can see here that you basically just give it a clap derivative, and it works fairly easy with, these, I don't know why I'm saying mutexes. Macros. Thank you. Macros. C++ has them. Rust has fantastic macro support. And you just define these macros and it just parses your strings for you. And it's pretty fantastic. So use Clap. The next one is Cobra. This is for all of your Go applications. There are other solutions out there, but if you're writing a Go application, that's a command line tool. If you're just getting into Go, I highly recommend Cobra. Why? A lot of projects use it. It's a well thought out library, and it has a ton of community support. So if you have a problem, you're going to be able to find a solution. That being said, is it the end all be all? No, there's other solutions out there that are also fantastic. This is just my personal favorite. All right, for all of you Fortran lovers out there, there's Flap, the Fortran command line argument parser for poor people. It really should be like clap. Anyways, I have never used it. I thought bringing up the Fortran command line, it exists out there and it has more stars than I care to imagine a Fortran library in 2021 having. So here you go, Flap. NASA also has a Fortran argument parser. So there you go. And lastly, we have, because this one's less important than the Fortran, we have Click, which is a Python package for parsing command line. I think Python makes a lot of sense for command line utilities. And so if you're making one in Python, Click is my go-to. That being said, I'm not great at Python, so don't necessarily take my word for it. But I have really liked using Click whenever I do a Python thing. I don't do them often, but yes, that's yes. I really do like Cobra when it goes to Go. I think Cobra's hand down the easy choice for Go. Rust, everything is newer. So while I love Clap for Rust, very easily it could be, some other library could come out and take its place. But for the time being, Clap is my go-to for that one. Cobra is extensively supported. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks for sticking around. I super appreciate it. All right. So for a quick recap, if you'd like to see those challenges, let me know. I think that's what we're going to do. I think enough people have already shown support for that. Monthly challenges, maybe the last Saturday of the month, we'll do the 4-hour stream where we take on a challenge and we do it live. And then what I might do is I might take that live stream and make like a condensed highlights version that's a little more easy to ingest. Anyways, that's it for the news today. How did everybody like it? I know that it went kind of long, and I'm sorry. I keep trying to make them short, and I keep finding interesting things. I don't know if everybody loves the really something for everyone, or if people would just like me to keep it a lot shorter. Would you like just 15 minutes? Half hour? Let me know. Anyways, remember, if you'd like me to make this a podcast, if you'd like me to make the work to do it as a podcast, I need to hit 100 consistent viewers. When I hit 100 consistent viewers, I will make the audio recording as a podcast as well, as soon as I know that there's demand for it. It's extra work. It's not that I'm holding it prisoner or anything. It's just extra work, and extra work I say some sort of reward. I want a goal. So anyways, thank you all for joining Null News Now. I will see you next week, where we're going to discuss probably whatever Apple releases in 4 hours. Have a fantastic week. I look forward to seeing you all next week. And have a fantastic week. Don't let the news keep you down. Let it keep you up. I don't even know what that meant. I'm not going to use that ever again as a saying. I promise.